the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Welcome to the very first Grey Hat Beard podcast. So the aim for this is to be a podcast where we share things we've learnt, both internally and externally. So there's the three of us here. We're going to introduce ourselves properly in a minute. Very much a casual chat, hoping to record this every 2 weeks, projects and life depending on that. We're hoping to get some special guests in, occasionally both internal and external, also to come and chat on there. The aim is that we will publish these outside of CPS, but initially we're just having that little chat, get ourselves familiar, see what works. Sharing the information we've learned, sharing the information, things we've done, things we've read about, things we want to do more about. General agenda we're looking at is about 10 minutes, taking it turns, talking about what we've been doing, thinking of what's sort of front of mind, as Al said a bit earlier. Any particularly interesting news that's caught our attention, then going into a few specific topics. So we're going to pick a topic each week. This week, we're going to talk about what we learned from Ignite and ESPC and how we see that playing into 2020. And then we're going to finish up, hopefully, still working a little bit on this, but we're going to see some tips coming out at the end. And we're going to start this year with some tips for the year ahead, if we get enough time on there. But first, some introductions. So I'm going to pass over to Al first to introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Al. I'm Head of Modern Workplace at CPS, and I bring hat to the name.
You are Hat.
I am Hat, yes.
And I guess I'll go next. So my name is Gary Trinder, Solutions Architect at CPS, Microsoft MVP as of last week, which is pretty cool. And member of the PMP CLI team. I am Beard. It's kind of getting there. Give me a few weeks and it'll be a bit more impressive, hopefully.
I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to see how the beard evolves, changes as we go through the podcast. And I'm Kevin McDonald. I'm a solutions architect here at CPS. Been working with Microsoft stuff for many moons. Moved into consultancy space about 3 years ago from lots of financial services. And I bring the grey, although it's going further and further back. Bald hat beard didn't have the same ring to it, but by the end of this podcast series, it may become that. So we're going to try and keep these relatively short, about half an hour-ish. We are all prone to waffle on a little bit, so my aim is to keep an eye on that and not go too far. And let's kick off with stuff we've been looking at. So Al, I believe you've been looking at some stuff.
I can't help looking at stuff. There's so much stuff to look at. The challenge is always finding the interesting stuff to look at. Stuff that I've been really thinking about recently is Power Platform. Really, I guess, looking at where it is at the moment, what I see customers asking for, community asking for, and where it's going to go, where we are going to end up, with the new wave that's going to be released in April. And really thinking about it not from a citizen developer side, but from an application side, really thinking about Power Platform as a genuine platform to develop solutions on, rather than what I call team productivity. Being able to say to an organization, right, you've got champions in different areas of that organization, and they can increase the productivity of their departments by having the domain knowledge around what they're doing and the processes that they're running. Give them some technical capability around using Flow, using Power Apps, and then allow them to actually increase the productivity of their team. The other side of that, which I'm thinking about, is more about how we bring together the full model-driven apps with Canvas apps, with all the components of Power Automate, so Flow, business process flows, UI flows, and Power BI. To really bring line of business applications to the Power Platform. I think that's an area that, in my view, we are getting very close to having enterprise-ready solutions that we can start to have the robust ALM elements in order to actually create and test and deploy to a production environment where there is change control in there, and we can get through things like change boards.
The hidden side of the Power Platform, it's the maturity of it now, isn't it? It's for years, I guess we've been hearing about all the citizen developer goodness, but that doesn't always help enterprise.
I think it's these blurred lines, and I think the way it's been advertised is it's there, it's a platform, and now people are starting to see where they're using it. I think the citizen developers taken a lot, and then gradually we're seeing more and more of the more formalized piece come along.
And I think,
but there's no clear look.
The other thing that I see a lot is the IT departments going, oh no, this is going to be like this is going to be like Excel. This is going to be like all those other unmanageable citizen super user things.
Let's turn it off.
And it is one of those things that a lot of IT departments go. The first question I think I had around it was, well, how do we stop people actually creating these things?
Oh, the alternative is you've got people in IT departments who have no idea it's even there. Yeah. And there's a whole mess being made.
It's guerrilla adoption. It really is. Well, do you know what it's being used? Well, no, we've not told anyone it's there. Well, that doesn't mean that people haven't clicked that little button and gone, now what is that?
I had this with the client not long ago and said, is anyone using Flow? And they were like, no, clicked, and it saw this big long stream of them. It was like, that's interesting.
And that's not a Power Platform issue as well. It's a Teams issue as well.
Teams, SharePoint.
Everything's turned on default, people aren't using it, and then IT departments freak out when you do actually want to use it because they realise that there's 6,000 teams being created.
And I think from the Power Platform in particular, it is kind of getting to that point where you go, what is actually there? And I think that whole governance piece. Microsoft are great at releasing lots of tools. They give us lots of capabilities. They don't necessarily give us the governance and the control up front. It's something that inevitably comes along after the horse has bolted.
Use it first.
And then we have to come back. And I think that's the other element, to turn a Power Platform environment into something that's governed, something that's managed, something that is being used and being used efficiently. You do need to then go, well, what is actually there? How do we start to close these stable doors so that we've got more control?
And keeping an eye on the time. I think one of the things Gary and I have been working on, one of those classic ones where you go into a client, they go, yeah, I love that Microsoft Search looks brilliant, that capability in SharePoint's great, can we have that, just not in SharePoint? And rather than go down the Power Platform route, because they didn't want to, they didn't want to sort of roll that out to everyone, they wanted to have it as a website that they could use there. We've been looking at doing static websites, so very low cost, being able to deploy that site onto Azure storage, having it use the graph services, putting authentication around it, so using Azure AD for the authentication, using Graph, using to access Microsoft Search as well as some SharePoint aspects, using the SharePoint REST API to get that content without any real server backend apart from those API points. And by then doing that with deployment using Azure DevOps to push those through, automated tests, UI tests, as well as unit tests, we can publish that very quickly. And, we got POC up running very, very fast with that, in a similar way to the Power Platform. Now, obviously, it needed some more technical guys involved in that. But if you're starting to look at the line of business applications, there is definitely a different space, if you're looking there, where you can put that governance, that more formal side, get that speed and ease of use on there. And I think maybe another session we can do is to talk about when should you use Power Platform, when should you look at other things, what are the things to consider?
Yeah, I think from kind of moving on from what Al said about Power Platform and adoption is, from my point of view, looking at where's the tooling to help support the conversations of, have we got a mess? How do we deploy things efficiently? Power Platform.
How much of a mess have we got?
Yeah, the Power Platform ALM stuff is there. It's definitely not robust enough for enterprise level. What tools could be created to help support that? Things that I've been looking at. going to what you said, Kevin, about the approach of, there's an alternative to using Power Platform, this kind of static website, Office 365 app approach, which is, back into more traditional development. But, I see that Power Platform and those type of developments could really complement each other in the sense that sometimes you just want to prove an idea to a customer. And it might be the Power Platform, you can build a Power App and get it built really quickly just to prove a concept.
Yep.
And then use that as almost like, well, you've kind of made a real world live POC. Actually, you don't want to embed yourself into Power Platform and the licensing, but you're quite happy to take that concept and rebuild it in a technology that's going to allow you to be.
And I think it also depends on the industry. It depends on the compliance, the legislative requirements. If you've got something that's a highly compliant industry, Power Platform may not meet the compliance requirements, at which point switching over and being able to say, right, we can access Graph API, we can build something out, we can use all of the mature ALM capabilities, that gives you a different option. You obviously have to work within different constraints. You're not necessarily going to be using it on a mobile device and using, the ability to use GPS and all of that stuff. But obviously you balance out the requirements that you have.
It's having options, isn't it? It's that, Microsoft would love to say everything can go into the Power Platform. The reality is, everything can.
And let's face it,
everything can go in access.
Everything to go into the Power Platform. But so long as it's being hosted in Azure, they're not really going to complain too much.
That's true.
Okay, I think we should definitely have a future session on the Power Platform. I know that's very front and center for us, and opportunities there. Gary, what else have you been up to?
CLI work. So been helping out with adding new functionality to that tool.
Sorry, Gary. For those who may not be aware, what is the CLI? And
the Office 365 PMP Office 365 CLI is a cross-platform tool, so it can be used on Windows, it can be used on Linux, it can be used on Mac, to basically connect to multiple Office 365 services. So we don't live in a world now where everything's just in SharePoint. You connect into SharePoint, you connect into Teams, you connect into all these different services. So the CLI provides a nice, easy way to be able to write scripts that can connect to.
So where we may previously have used the PMP for provisioning SharePoint and provisioning sites, we would have connected just to SharePoint, and we wouldn't have been able to connect to Planner or to Teams or other things.
Exactly. You'd have to roll your own. You'd have to then handle all that authentication. CLI allows you to just call different commands. You log in once. You can call SharePoint. You can call Planner,
so it's much better for deploying across multiple workloads.
Yes.
So we shouldn't be using PMP just for SharePoint. We should be using CLI. Yeah.
Well, kind of. Yeah. There's the big debate of, it's not PowerShell. You can use the CLI with PowerShell. So we sit in the middle. We don't say you have to use PowerShell, you have to use Bash. The glue in the middle, if you like. The idea is you can use us anywhere. It's a different approach, but we think that it's got a lot of benefit. We do lots of releases, so we have weekly releases, monthly releases. So we're always busy, accepting pull requests, doing reviews, updating documentation, and just kind of being on the other side of the open source world.
Cool.
Seeing it from the maintainer's side is interesting. But
well, that could be a whole nother session as well.
It definitely could
be an open source project.
I think it's everyone should know about open source. Everyone should know how to contribute to open source. I think it's no longer it'd be a nice thing to do. I see it as pretty much a core skill now.
It's a public service thing, isn't it? If you make it's like the community. You make use of learning from the community. Ideally, you get to the point where you can actually return the favour and share to other people.
I've been doing the CLI work for quite a few months now, and I've learned so much in that short space of time, through anything. It's amazing what you learn when you kind of put yourself out there and into the community. So it's great.
Apologies for the brief interlude from me there. I tried to share my screen to show the Office CLI, and Teams crashed. So I won't keep saying that. So difficult to say. But no, cool.
So
I think
what about you then, Kevin? I've not asked you. What have you been up to?
Well, I say most of my stuff's been on the static websites. That's really been the thing grabbing my attention and looking at. Also, the thing I haven't been doing that I wish I had more time to is looking more into bots. So I've got my Where on Earth bot, which is available there and being used daily to chat there. And this is a bot that sits within Teams, goes and looks at the Bing background, shares the image of that to everyone in that Microsoft team. You guess where it is, and at the end of the day, or when everyone's guessed, it tells you whoever's closest. So really nice way to get people engaged with Teams, building. There's people I'm talking with internally that don't usually speak to. It's a nice way to get to know people. Being in Teams or being in the chat channel, you have that conversation. It's not just about filling out an app and clicking. It's that social engagement. So that's been really nice. And
Building
starting to look at other bots. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And building adoption, understanding how you can build that community with Teams, using Teams to do that. So
nice.
I'm hoping
a wide variety of people from across the organisation
involved. Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping to get that published as an app template with Microsoft. They found a couple of things they want to tweak out, which is I wish I had a bit more time to try and resolve some of those issues that are getting onto the technical side, involving dialogues and all sorts of fun and games there. So that's I wish I had been working on that, but mostly looking at the static websites. Cool. Al, you mentioned a couple of events coming up. Did you want to cover?
Community events, yeah. So I guess this week we've had the Power Apps user group in London, which was very good. First time I have to say that I've heard Power Apps and Access in the same session, which was really quite intriguing. Seeing as we get a lot of people saying
using them together, I hope.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Together.
Oh,
using Access as a back end for Power, which was a first for me.
Yeah.
I have to say,
I'm going to be honest. I hope I last. And I know there are some dedicated Access lovers. I'm going to put my hands on the table and say not.
If I didn't go to user groups, I would never have heard of that. But yeah, I mean, there are some. Next week we've got Ignite the tour. They're stopping off in London for 2 days on Thursday and Friday. So massive. I think it's 8,000 people attending that down at XL. So if you've registered for a ticket, then you'll be one of those 8,000. Lots and lots of sessions.
And if you have registered and you're not going, cancel your registration to let other people go.
There is definitely a waiting list.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's going to be loads of great sessions down there. The London Power Apps user group is hosting an unconference, a Power Apps unconference.
Cool.
So there's a bunch of stuff, bunch of us talking around various different things for Power Apps. So yeah, well worth getting down if you've got a ticket and you've registered. Make the most of it, and certainly, as you say, Gary, if you're not going to go, cancel your ticket so that somebody else can go. I guess the next one after that I'm looking forward to is Scottish Summit, which I think everybody who speaks is actually going. They've got a phenomenal number of speakers.
They're up to about 800 attendees as well.
I thought you were going to say speakers there.
Oh, no.
It feels like
so. I think it's about 800 is the capacity. They're almost at capacity. So if you haven't yet register for that. I think on the Saturday it's free.
Apart from Scotland, where is that?
It's Glasgow, centre of Glasgow. Strathclyde University, I think it is. But yeah, there's 90 sessions on the Saturday, so
yeah,
more sessions than you could,
including me.
And me.
Yeah.
What are you speaking on, Gary?
SharePoint webhooks.
I'm speaking on accessibility.
Two totally different sessions.
Completely different sessions. Completely different. So yeah, it's well worth getting up there for that. After that, lots of different user groups going on. So yeah, keep an eye out for the user groups.
Yeah, so we've got user group next week in Leeds. So Power Platform user group Leeds. It's the first one of 2020. We've actually got Simon Denton to come talk to us, Microsoft MVP, who's been involved in Project Cortex. So really excited to see, what he's going to show us. And I think he said it's the first time he's spoken about Cortex outside a Microsoft event. Which is very interesting. So hopefully we'll be able to get some interesting.
I think that's going to be a theme for this year, though, isn't it? Cortex.
Yes, definitely. So that's on Tuesday. So if you're around Leeds, we're 5 minutes from the train station. So if you're passing, drop in. And we've got a couple of other sessions later on after Simon about adaptive cards and me doing the CLI.
Adaptive cards is cool as well.
We've
got some questions for you for that, then you can take to that. Yeah, I think that's another thing, though. If you can't attend, find somebody who is attending and give them your questions so that they can ask the people who are presenting.
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah, adaptive cards. Dylan Hayes, who's a great speaker as well. Really good to listen to. I've just remembered one other event coming on, Collab 365 running a global conference. And what I love about this one, it's purely online. So you can join up. The speakers pre-record their sessions, but they're there in the chat. So as it's going through, you can ask questions and get those kind of live responses. So really nice way. It's a free event. If you register, first 2,000s, you can see on the screen there, first 2,000 tickets are free. And then there's a pretty low price for it, certainly lower than many of the big conferences. A huge number of MVPs and big experts who are speaking there. Got Mark Cashman from Microsoft. Matt Weston's always good to listen to. There's some bloke talking about Microsoft Search, Kevin McDonnell. I've heard he's there to,
I hear that trumpet blowing.
But lots of awful plug there. But they're setting up on different days. There's a day on Teams, day on SharePoint, day on Dynamics. So yeah, definitely worth registering.
I think the thing about them being online is you have top presenters from around the world as well. So it's not just the local presenters. You know, it's a very international crowd who are presenting. So they are all experts in their own areas, even including that guy just there.
Yeah, apart from that one, yeah.
The only other kind of event that's on my radar is June, and it's the Collab Summit, which I went to last year. Absolutely incredible community event. Over 2,000 people were there for a community event over 4 days. I think it's 3 days for the conference and a day for workshop. So they're running it again. If you get the chance to go. It's brilliant. It's a great place where the conference as well, and they've got some amazing speakers.
Yeah, I think just thinking about with the Power Platform, you've got the Microsoft Business Application Summit coming up as well, which like Ignite is a forum for making a lot of announcements, and certainly that will have a lot of announcements around Power Platform, but also you've got the SharePoint conference in May, June, which will also have a lot of announcements.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it's going to be Q2 is going to be lots of news and interesting stuff coming out.
Yeah, Q1's just recovering from the last course, isn't it?
It's recovering from Ignite.
So talking recovering, maybe we can cover a couple of bits of the news. I think Gary, you were going to talk about something there.
So kind of the big thing, it's a new release of SharePoint Framework, not just a small release as well. It's kind of, we've been hearing this for a while, that SharePoint Framework was going to start to appear in different areas of Microsoft 365. Last year, the way that Microsoft were talking about development moved from being Office 365 to Microsoft 365. That was quite noticeable. So now what we're seeing is more integration with Microsoft Teams. So before we could just create a web part and we could surface that in a tab. Now you can create personal apps from those web parts. Really simple to do as well. So actually, if you've got a 1.9 web part,
they were talking a while back about that evolution of from Office 365 for rather than being SharePoint framework to it being what you would be using for Office add-ins and everything. And is this the first kind of step towards
it's
doing
not
that?
all it's not all there yet. It's as you say, it's the step towards it.
First step,
and they haven't come up with a name for it yet. It's still SharePoint framework. It's been going on for
Well,
about a year
that's what
debating that, but
I think they've learnt that, haven't they? If they change the name, not only do they have to spend a lot of money putting a space into everything, but all of those Bing ratings, for ranking all of their results, it suddenly makes it difficult to find everything again.
As you say about the Office add-ins, so in this release, they've added in the preview now. So for Outlook add-ins and Excel and things. So
that'll be an absolute game changer.
Definitely,
it's the same platform to develop on all of those different platforms.
Yes.
I've got a framework web part that goes into Outlook and goes into Teams.
And we've kind of been here before in terms of the old add-in model. Did kind of try to do that and
tried to do that.
And it didn't do very well. But I think now, because it seems to be one team that's dealing with this, and they're working with all the different pro groups within Microsoft as well, and that seems to be a big theme at the moment. I can hear this a lot, where they are talking to each other internally from engineering teams, and
that's a massive change.
Massive.
But I think, and I think also, Visa at the PMP calls always has that chart of the growth of SPFX, because they've got all that analytics, all that telemetry. They can see how much is being used, and it's just this curve that not only is carrying on accelerating, but not carry on growing, but it's accelerating. They see more and more usage. So it's a model that's being adopted not just by Microsoft. People are actively using it and really picking up, which I think is great. So I think it makes a lot of sense.
The framework now. I think that it's people adopting it as well. We will use SharePoint framework even if we're working on-prem, rather than doing the script editors and things like that. To give that, I guess, better approach to development.
I think it's part of the direction that Microsoft are taking, because if you think about Microsoft Search as well, rather than it being SharePoint Search, I always remember when Dynamics got upgraded, we went, why didn't you have SharePoint Search in there? Such a lovely engine to use, really powerful, but it's completely different because the product teams just don't talk. Microsoft Search, spanning everything, being hooked into Bing, now going to be available on Android in the UK. You get that difference, not product related, it is platform related. And it's not even one platform, it's potentially all of the platforms. All of the Microsoft Cloud platform, being able to interrogate it from one place using search.
So search is one thing. I think we're going to see, it's this kind of bringing things out of SharePoint into the wider ecosystem. So search is one thing. We know that we've got the term store being changed as well. That's going to go up across Office 365.
So you'll have your Microsoft framework, your Microsoft Search, Microsoft Term Store. It all gets pushed up. Even more need for CLI then, really, isn't it?
I'm going to be the cynic there and say
top level.
I'm going to be the cynic and say until one of the teams decides to do something new and then deviates off again. But anyway, I think we'll move on to some of the other news. I think we'll try and rattle through quickly. Al, you had a bit of news as well.
Yeah, so that was the use of Android and Google having to actually allow people to choose which search they want to use, which search engine. They had it on their browsers a while back, but now it's on Android. Do I have to use Google or can I use Bing? Certainly in the UK, Bing will be an option, but DuckDuckGo is the main one that they seem to have gone with. I think it's really interesting with Bing because you can tie in Microsoft Search into Bing, and you can do a search using the Bing site, but it will come up with your corporate content as well. It'll be very interesting to see whether that gets rolled into search on Android, so that you could actually be on your mobile device, your tablet, doing a search, finding your corporate content as well as your public content. So for a corporate device, that would be ideal. That'd be really nice. Obviously, people will still distrust all the results and not trust them quite as much as Google. But I think there are some interesting potential options there, because with Android, the Microsoft launcher is really nice. It makes Android really usable, and it hooks into To-Do, it hooks into your tasks, your calendars, and everything.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think it's that endpoint that Microsoft's got, because I'll be honest, didn't really use Bing. Then I started using Edgeium, the new Chrome-based, Chromium-based Edge. It was Bing by default, and I thought, I'll wait until this annoys me, and so far it hasn't. Been using it for sort of 6 months or so, and have stuck with Bing. Have generally found the results and haven't kind of gone, I don't feel these are right results. So I think it's that vehicle into the search. People generally don't think I have to Google this. They think I have to search. The natural place is Google, but if it leads it to other places, that's where it goes. So this is, I think, slightly worrying for Bing, that they're seeing it not getting that front and center to people automatically. I think you're right about the Microsoft launcher, and that's where Microsoft's pushing these things. But how do they get these search services in front of people will be interesting to watch.
Yeah. I think the other side of this is that I do find it a bit strange that you'd make a decision that would say, it's going to be you're the alternative. As a person using a device, I don't want the company to dictate what I can and can't use. If I'm using Bing, I want to use that on my device.
I think it's about the order they offer things.
It's the same thing that EU did with browsers, though. They did exactly the same thing to Microsoft and said you can't just use IE, you have to offer a choice. So you had that install of, okay, what browser do you want to use? Yeah. The fact that Bing initially had the highest search was how do I download Chrome. You can still do all of that. Yeah. This is just a formality, but it will push some of these other search engines. More
the number of people that will just use the default is massive, or they may go, I don't want to use Google anymore, I'll use the next one down. So by not being second, I think it's great for DuckDuckGo, which is a good engine, definitely, but bad news for Bing. I think the other one, talking about Google, that I found fascinating more than anything else, is that Google revealed that they've mapped 98% of the Earth on their maps now. Gary, you asked earlier, I wonder what the 2% is. North Korea, possibly. And some of the items.
I think
that's huge. I mean, it's so natural to me when I get in the car, I just use Google Maps to find where I'm going. It gives me the traffic, it will route me through there. It's just easy to use whichever country you're in. You can get the offline maps. It's just a natural place. So
I wonder what the carbon footprint is for all of this. Just to kind of give it a bit of an environmental twist, because they do drive around in cars taking all this information.
Two different things. One, the 98% is the Google Maps, so and Google Earth on there. The 10 million miles of Street View, and they regularly redo it as well. Because I have a look at our house every now and then. You sort of see the cars have moved things, and you can go back and look at the previous one. So it's not like they do it every few years. I'd say certainly in the UK, it's about once a year they update it.
Yeah, what the 2% is, how many restricted areas are there in the US for military sites? As you say, North Korea, I think they probably have more images of North Korea than they necessarily release.
It'd be interesting to see if there's a Google streetcar driving out into the middle of the Nevada desert.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm certainly not getting up to the top of Everest.
That is true.
Just got lost. But they do have the personal packs, so I think they've certainly gone to base camp, because you can have these rucksacks with the cameras on, so that they use for a lot of the shopping centres and things. So I'm pretty sure they've had their base camp, which is interesting. So moving on to other news, a little more close to us. I found this interesting. Saw this just before Christmas, that Microsoft really getting into the HR tech space. There's been a lot that it's had in there in the past. A lot of HR people use SharePoint, use Dynamics and other things, but Microsoft really positioning themselves there. They've got the Dynamics 365 human resources, so particular software targeting, looking at Workday and things like what's the other one? Success Factors.
This is, with Microsoft buying LinkedIn a while ago, not really doing anything. Got connectors.
exactly what I was about to say. But what they're doing is connect those things. So we're, LinkedIn Learning, which I know we use, is a great tool. They've then got the LinkedIn recruitment, talent hub, I think they call it. But they're starting to connect this in now with Dynamics. So that Dynamics for HR has that linked in with LinkedIn, which is really starting to see the benefit of not just seeing the investment from LinkedIn, but seeing all that come into the rest of the product as well. So be interesting to watch and see what happens with that.
Having looked at the Dynamics talent management solution, it's tightly coupled with LinkedIn. It is expected that you use LinkedIn to publish your jobs, to capture your CVs. All of the applications are from LinkedIn. I think it'll be very interesting to see how they approach some of the really established players in this space, because this is such a massive industry, and people so rarely change their HR systems because they are so critical to running a business that, if you want to change your HR system and say, I'm going to move over to a Microsoft system, I think most companies will look at that and go, the feature parity won't be there. And I know the recruitment part of HR talent was challenging to get up and running with. I think it is a massive opportunity though, because there are so many companies out there who will go, we don't actually have to pay that much more for adding this in to an existing estate of Microsoft products.
If you're using Dynamics already, it fits.
Absolutely. And it then becomes, well, I can then use the Power Platform. I can then extend this stuff out because it's all built on the same underlying storage. It's got assuming it's got all of the hooks, the actions and triggers for, things like Power Automate. It suddenly becomes a very compelling proposition. But it will be the feature parity that will be.
But it's interesting because I've worked a bit with Workday, and it's interesting you talk about that hooks, because Workday, very modern looking, great HR applications compared with the grey, nasty screens of the past. But the APIs were not great. It was very, very hard to get into the data. They wanted you to use it within Workday to try and get it out and have feeds to get events trickling off. Was very, very hard to do. This was a few years ago. Don't know if things have changed. So not downplaying Workday. I thought it was a great tool, but that ability to link in with everyone else, ignoring the capital L, capital I LinkedIn, to connect in with everything else, I think is a very good space that Microsoft could go into.
It's just another kind of, for me, this is another, another thing that is showing to me that Microsoft is where they've sat on the fence for so long. We've seen this with the intranet. Microsoft always said, you can use SharePoint for building an intranet. It's not an intranet. And then we get into Office 365. It's now, here's your intranet in a box. They are going out and saying we are an intranet, to now say, well, we know that people have been using SharePoint for HR stuff and Dynamics for years. Absolutely. It's just another progression to say, hang on, we can roll this up as a service, and it's not going to fit everyone, but it's going to fit a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of small, medium enterprises that will go, well, we can have something here that's already integrated. Why do we need to go out of the bubble, so to speak?
And I think there will be a maturity model where you go, well, actually, am I managing HR for an SME using Excel? Yes. Okay. What's the next step? Oh, well, maybe I use a SharePoint list and I have some automation. What's the next step? There's always going to be those decision points to say, I need more capability. Staying in the bubble to get that extra capability is very compelling.
And with it, HR data as well. All the stuff that comes off.
And you start to look at the AI using the cognitive services, all the things like that. Very interesting space. Now, we've been going for about 35 minutes, which was the length I was looking at, and we still haven't hit the main topics we're going to talk about. Can I check you guys are still good to continue for a bit more?
Good.
Yeah. So the main topic I thought we try and cover is, obviously Gary and I were both at ESPC for different lengths. Al, you were over
briefly.
Al, you were over at Ignite this year. Just like you to grab, and I don't think we can go in detail because I think a lot of these topics we'll probably cover in detail in other ones, but maybe we'll kick off with Al, who's at Ignite. What was the big topics that you, maybe two or three, that you really take away
Only 2 or 3.
Yeah.
A week's worth of immersion in Microsoft's roadmap and dream of what's coming is, it is always really hard to.
I don't know how you coped being like boots on the ground. I was struggling just watching Twitter.
I think it's an interesting. I've done it several years, so I've kind of now got it as to how much information I can realistically consume and absorb. I think for me there are probably two things that I'll draw attention to. So the first one, I think, is Project Cortex. I think that's, as you said earlier, Gary, SharePoint, this is a platform. It can do a lot of stuff, but it's not going to be as good as those other products that are focusing on those things as their core purpose. SharePoint was always, it's a jack of all trades. You can get so far and then it kind of dries up a bit. They've done the intranet, they've modernized it. They've now got a platform they can build stuff on that they can expand and extend really much more effectively than they could before. SharePoint was always just an amalgamation of lots of different bits of technology that they bought, which made it really hard to change.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to really kind of be able to go, right, we've done this, now we're going to do this piece over here. And Cortex, I think, combines many different features that other vendors have been selling as add-ons to SharePoint, essentially.
Yeah.
But they had info. I can't remember what they were called. The Infopedia.
Say Infopath for a second.
Infopedia they talked about 2 or 3 years ago, and it never quite made it out.
Oh, okay.
And I think there's, they had a lot of feedback because you need more stuff in here. You need to have the AI stuff really to make something like Cortex work. And I think that's where they've kind of reached that critical mass of, they've got the cognitive services that they can hook into easily. They've plugged them all into SharePoint for things like alt text when you've had images in. They've made that kind of leap to say,
and I
kind of bring this
that's
together.
The key. It's that plug-in. It's that ability to inject. Because I think there have been other vendors who've done a very nice job at doing the AI, getting the data out. But because it's Microsoft, they can plug that data in straight there. So the example, the one that really made me go, oh yes, was you have that email. When a topic is mentioned, it will highlight and you can click on that topic from within the email. So it was core, and core is a project you work on, and it will take you to a knowledge hub. That ability to have it integrate into everything you do, that I think is the exciting bit.
And for me, I think that's the maturity of Office 365 and Azure. They've reached that critical mass point where they can go, we've got all of these services, and now all we're doing is wiring them up. Where we've had things like Outlook on the web that being able to go, oh, is that a task? Do I want to do something? Cortex has taken that to a whole new level. And I think it's going to be intriguing to see how we can make the most of what they're doing and the amount of data that we actually need to make it work. I can see you just
and how much they're going to charge. That for me is the bit that is my caveat, I think, to all of it.
As with everything with Microsoft, how they cost it, they're not going to say until it's launched, and it may be prohibitive. But it being prohibitive, they make licensing changes. If nobody buys it because it's too costly, then they will either change what they're offering or they'll change the price. But I think it genuinely will be intriguing to see where they position it, how much uptake there is, and actually what the output will be on day one, as opposed to having to then go, it does 50% of what most clients would consider MVP. So that'll be intriguing.
I think it's interesting. I'm working with a client a few months back, and global company, lots of research, people in different areas collecting information, submitting things, and it's so difficult to get out of those silos of either regional or departmental, and being able to share that information through Cortex of, here's a topic, actually look at all this stuff that people have already put into the system from different areas of the business.
But I do think that there is still going to be the risk that I guess SharePoint. I've been doing SharePoint for far too long. As with most as with most tech, it's cyclical. And what Cortex is going to bring back to the fore is the use of metadata and
Yeah.
the ability to ensure that everything is tagged accurately, which has always been an absolute massive challenge.
And you touched on term store earlier, Gary, that my hope is that even if they price the full Cortex very high, that the things that will cascade down from that, like the new term store, like better metadata, there will be bits that cascade down to the more E3 level that the vast majority of people are, there will still be some benefits, even if you don't get the whole thing. That's my big hope.
Yeah, and coming back to it, it all starts with the data collection. If your data collection isn't right, the outputs are going to be rubbish. And what I'm interested in seeing, and hopefully I'll see this on Tuesday at the user group, is how the Power Platform is being used to make that as simple as possible.
See, for me, the demos I've seen of Cortex have relied on AI Builder.
There is that as well. Yeah,
and that really does come into the tools that have been out there that have been automating the tagging. I'm going to send this document up off to cognitive services. I'm going to digest it. I'm going to come back with some keywords, and I'm going to come back and map it to my defined term sets and say how I'm going to tag it. That stuff, if that's rolled into SharePoint, that will work, because otherwise you come back to I've got OneDrive, I've got things synced to my machine. I'm going to create a file on my machine and save it into OneDrive. It's going to get synced up to SharePoint. Now it needs to be automatically tagged. Yeah. That's
I think so I was lucky. I joined some of the research groups at ESPC. Microsoft came along, and there was Sean Squires and a few others there running some sessions. They're NDA'd, so I can't talk too much about what's in there. My feeling for that auto tagging, there's some things on there. They were very clear on the things that were at Ignite, that it's about machine teaching. So it's not give it a load of documents and it'll pull a load of things out automatically. It's give it a few documents, give it pointers as to where you want to pick things out, and it will start to learn from those. Now, my experience, and I don't think this breaks any NDA things, is that is early doors at the moment. I don't think it's as easy as it should be to see things there, and I think there's going to be a lot of iterations of that. I think we will see things change quite a lot from that to try and make it, because exactly what we're saying, try and make it as easy as possible for people.
Yeah, I think the other thing from Ignite that really jumped out was work management. I think work management has always been something that Microsoft have given us so many different tools to do.
No.
Believe it or not, they have given us a lot of, everything from OneNote to DevOps to online
to Outlook,
all of those.
To taking away Wunderlist.
Yeah, and
that's a touchy subject.
Let's not get controversial just yet. But that's always been, big request that I've always had, and clients have always had. Everybody's had. Just show me everything in one place.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we are on the cusp of getting things consolidated in a way that we can manage them more effectively. We can simplify down some of the really complex project online stuff to accommodate, accidental PMs, that gives more structure, more governance, more robustness, and then we can extend it with a Power Platform, which is it's an amazing prospect to go, okay, so we've got something that starts off robust that we can actually extend in any way that we want using the Power Platform. And I think that's where we're seeing, again, the maturity of the platform come along to say, yeah, you can do this stuff, and we're giving it to you in a way that hopefully is more managed than access, but more flexible than what we have had in terms of custom development.
Just going to say, I never thought that we'd hear access as many times. Sitting down talking, it's still around.
Right, there's a lot to answer for, doesn't it?
It's still around, but it is a comparison either for good or evil, isn't it?
That is true. That is true. Yeah, and it is interesting. The management stuff is the old world and the new world. So the project world. The Gantt charts to now project on the web, which is not Gantt charts. Has it? Okay. It looked a bit more agile to me.
No, it's
that flow. It's that ability to have your to-do list and that ability to have Gantt charts and know where you are in that, and how you can connect into it. I think that's the important thing, and to be able to have in one place access to all those different things. Your formal, this is your big plan. Your, oh yeah, I've got to do this podcast tomorrow, all in one place. Absolutely agree with you, Al.
I think that will be, as that comes along and becomes more mature. Yeah, I mean, it's got Gantt charts, but it's also got buckets. So you can still drag it between different buckets. So it's kind of a hybrid, but it is, we all know there's not one way to run a project or a set of tasks, or a team, or my individual tasks. But there's enough tools coming together in a way that gives multiple options with minimal tools.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. So you can kind of work with them in different ways, but still using the same tool set, which I think is really exciting for users because it reduces the complexity.
Yeah, it looks a lot more user friendly as well.
So moving on a little bit in the interest of time, I've got to drop off in 10 minutes. Gary, what's and obviously you're watching a lot of Ignite and you're at ESPC. Any
I had quite a big life event around both of those. So I was jumping in and out. So the life event was the birth of my daughter Edith. In the middle of Ignite and having to speak at ESPC
and still getting MVP
as well. Yeah, it's been quite a hectic few months, but yeah,
you set the bar high for multitasking there.
Yeah, don't ask me how I've done it. So I still don't know. I think I'm just it's a dream. But yeah, Project Cortex was kind of the really big thing. On the kind of the techie side, Synapse was the other big thing as well, which was, the fact that you could deal with that amount of data is just mind blowing.
Synapse was so big. I don't know how many people actually have enough data to justify.
Yeah, it's one of those incredible technological achievements that you think, wow, and then like you say, okay, who's actually going to be using this? Who's got that amount of data? But there's got to be companies out there that have that. So ESPC, I'll be honest, I didn't really. Apart from speaking, it was all a bit of a blur. I ended up in Prague. I was there for all of a few hours. I saw the Christmas market, and that was about it. Came home and then tried to sleep.
So I think we'll take one from ESPC specifically that surprised him a bit was the interest in developer sessions. That there's still a big developer community around SharePoint. I kind of felt that things had been dying off slightly, and there was kind of hardcore that was going and doing things, but it wasn't a broad church of people. But certainly the developer sessions were busier than many of the other ones. So I took that as a real positive. That it certainly feels like in a lot of cases people have been burnt by SharePoint installations where they've had to develop their own threads, do things themselves, then had to support it and felt the pain of that they've moved away from just doing the out the box. But I think because Microsoft's now got that solid core of that modern site, people are starting to learn where to extend that. So that was really good. I think from Ignite and others, Microsoft Search really starting to embed. I think some of the capabilities there it's still not fully there, but that ability to have that one search that really knows exactly what you do across everything. Really excited to see what happens from that. And then the final one, and sort of my personal thing, I love it, bots. I thought the bot framework, when it came out, a new way of looking at things, new way of engaging. And we've seen things like Alexa, Google Home, that ability to use that chat interface rather than the point and click, and using keyboards, being very specific, having that kind of broader way of engaging has been great. But I don't think it's had the uptake because it's a bit too hard to get moving with things and trying to get the right way to structure your bot. And I think with the Power Virtual Agent, I keep getting that the wrong way around. They've really, yeah, exactly. But I think they've made it very easy to get started with bots. You don't have to be a technical person. That idea of topics, that idea of the keywords, making it very easy to get into that has been great. And then also the bot framework composer, you don't just have to have this quite expensive Power Virtual Agent. You can go through creating your own bot framework in a similar way, very text driven, very end user style. And I think that opening up of how you can use bots will really see things pick up a bit. So I'm hoping to see a lot more happen in the bot space this year.
I think just pick up your point about the developer sessions. It's really interesting because, been developing on SharePoint and Office 365 for years. It's the transition of what the developer is now doing. I've spent years almost going to different clients doing the same tasks. You'd have to set up this is pre-SharePoint framework. You'd have to set up the framework that you're going to develop on. And now you don't have to do that. Now it's become so much easier to deploy custom
accelerators.
It accelerates that. But on the flip side, there's a lot more out of the box that can be done without development. So I think you can build an intranet without actually needing any custom code, and that is a real thing. So you're then going, okay, I'm adding different features through web parts, but then I see development then moving into a place where it's more behind the scenes. It's more automation.
I think it's so. I've worked with SharePoint developers for far too long, and from the days when you used to have your own VM and you used to have SharePoint installed on your own VM, and you were developing back-end code to do front-end activities.
Never.
That's the transition from those developers to go, right, now you need to learn front-end code, to now being, well, actually you've got your standard web technologies being used, that you don't have to worry about the SharePoint specific stuff. You're using TypeScript, you're using framework, which is a nice tool chain to be using. It's familiar to other people. And then you've got Azure. It is now, as you say, it's extending things that you can't do with the out of the box. But that, on one hand, means that there might be the perception that there's less development. But on the other hand, it tends to be the stuff that we were doing 10 years ago. We're going to integrate SharePoint with our back-end systems. We're going to do the automation and the process flows. We're doing that. We're back to that position again of developers are developing. And they're not being asked to do all some of this fancy front end stuff.
But I think they're also adding value, whereas before developers were having to do a lot of the basics that just weren't there. Now they can very, very specifically add value where it's needed, rather than just having to do the sort of small things that weren't quite there. It's a lot more interesting, and I think that's why I think there was a dip, but now it's picking up again as the developers have readjusted, and it's not just filling in the gaps, it's being more specific as well.
The other key thing for me is the role of the developer is much more defined now. This is the scope of what a developer, an Office 365 developer, would be expected to do, and that did get quite ambiguous. For 5 years or so, probably longer than that, it got quite ambiguous. Are you developing a pretty web part, or are you developing an integration? Now it's, most of the time it's that integration level and the front end, because that's handled. Consultants can do that. I can go in, I can configure it, end users can do that. They just need a bit of training and a bit of inspiration. And with things like the lookbook, that means it's kind of all tied down. And now it's, that won't do that. Right now, I need something more complex, more sophisticated.
And it comes back to the conversations that from the consultant's point of view is that, you're not thinking development straight off. Whereas previously you would go, well, we just need a developer straight away. We have to develop. Whereas now you're then picking out maybe 10% of things.
And it goes, I think, Gary, what you were saying before, of doing that Power Platform to prototype, and then you can extend it, make it things later. I think we have gone on for a nice while. I hope people have been interested in that. I think it's probably time to wrap up. We're going to evolve this slightly as we go through the podcast, but what we're going to do is wrap up with some tips. So we're going to go for your top tips for 2020 that can be about Office 365, can be about how to look after babies, absolutely anything. So I'm going to kick off. We're going to only do about 30 seconds, so very quick, not too much discussion. My ones, don't give up too much in January. Don't do the detox thing. it's a really gloomy, miserable month anyway. So stay, keep eating on there, but do Vegan Tuesday as I'm doing at the moment. Try and save the planet a little bit. And then my other one, which is a little bit more tech related, is read or listen to the Unicorn Project by Gene Kim. Really enjoyed the Phoenix Project. I'm in the midst of listening to this in the car at the moment. Where the Phoenix Project almost hit more of the management and the kind of life cycle of IT. Really good book, well worth listening to. This is very much more down to the developers, down to the front end and the people on the ground. So if you have read Phoenix Project, absolutely read this.
Yeah. And I'm also listening to it at the same time whilst traveling around in the car. So I've been looking forward to this. Definitely.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. And funny enough, she mentions she's written a little thing that pulls tasks from Trello and all the different ones, like essential work management. So
there you go.
The lady in it's got great ideas as well, Al. Gary, any tips apart from don't become an MVP and have a baby at the same time?
There is that one. Yeah. I can't give any tips for looking after a baby because I'm making up as I go along. As I think most people do.
I think most people do.
Yeah, I
think that top tip we all are.
Tip for 2020 is definitely, if you are a developer or non-developer even, learn how to use GitHub and learn how to update documentation on Microsoft Docs, or get involved in a community project, PMP, or set up your own. I think that, from a non-developer point of view, if you're reading docs and you go, well, that's just completely wrong, you have the power now to go in and make that change. It's that mind shift. We can all make the world a better place.
Yeah.
We can make the change and submit that. I've done changes in the past where literally they've just been a bit of formatting.
Just added that semicolon.
I saw a tweet that went out the other day. I think Patrick Rogers from the PMP JS project, Chris Kent, had raised a PR that changed one character. But it was a change that needed making. It was just the documentation was just, it was a bit of formatting. And it was, a lot of work to go into it, but it's the knowing how to do that, going through those steps, be open, ask questions. Once you've done it, it gets addictive. You will keep doing it, and you will learn so much by getting involved in community projects.
So I'm very conscious of time. I have two tips, and they're two words. One is participate.
Yep.
So participate in community events, participate in open source projects, and the other one is learn. Learn, carry on learning. None of us are experts. All we're doing is learning. We have experience of doing older things, but just carry on learning.
How very quickly, how would you learn? Top tip for that.
That's a whole nother session. So personally, I'm all over Twitter. I will look at Twitter. I will follow the links that are there. That's the best source of information. But go to community events, make face-to-face. Twitter's great, but meet people. Because for me, Twitter's great. I can consume that. But if I have an issue, if I have a challenge, a question, I'll put that out on Twitter. And if I know who to ask, then I will get the right response. And everybody on Twitter tends to be very amenable to answering questions. And so, ask me. I will answer questions without a doubt.
And what I say is participate, go along to those events, but exactly what Gary said, get involved in the project because you'll learn from those people. I've seen what Gary's learned from Weldeck and Velin and the others.
So much. Yeah.
You get that community by getting involved. You learn as well,
and I think it helps you in your daily work. Like really, it does.
So share, work out loud. Absolutely agree. I think it's a lovely place to wrap up. So thank you very much, Gary. Thank you very much, Al. Same time in 2 weeks' time.
Looking forward to it. Cheers.
Cheers up.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard Podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.